Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
All good at my end as well. So it was a long due conversation. So thanks so much for joining in and giving us some of your time. So we'll begin with a brief intro about Malhar. Malhar is right now building Flam, which is world's first metaverse, and would love to know about more on this. So before that, Malhar would like to know about your entrepreneurial journey, as in how did you get started at the first place while you were at a corporate job? You shifted your job to another company, and how did you take the entrepreneurial plunge at the first day?
Right. So first of all, thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me on the call. And I'm so glad. I wasn't expecting like more people to join in, but I'm so glad to see that there are lots of people already. So thanks a lot for taking out time on a Saturday afternoon. And I can understand there could be better things to do, but yeah, there's thank you so lot for coming out here and listening to our journey. So it's been talking about from coming from a experience wherein I was in the corporate world and then moving on to a startup experience as such. So the overall for me, I would say that it was something which I always wanted to do, right? Because entrepreneurship is something which wherein I feel particularly that given the skill sets I have and given which I had understood long back while during my engineering as such that I could figure out only couple of things which I could probably use my skill sets on, and then when I evaluated where in which scenario can I bring the maximum impact. So this was the scenario where I understood that like this is something which I would really love to try it out first and see where it goes. Because but thankfully due to maybe Guru God's grace, I've been doing pretty well in this space as well. So that was something which I always wanted to do, right? And then at the right time and right place, I found my co-founders and we started with the journey and everything. But yeah, so corporate life was something which I never really wanted. Maybe the reason for that could also be like my father being an entrepreneur himself, so I could see the impact he was able to create in his industry as such, right? So that's the reason why I was always inclined towards going towards the entrepreneur plunge.
That's amazing. So, we'd love to know about your team formation, as in the initial days when you were also looking for a co-founder, like most of the folks here over as well. So, how did you get your co-founders? How did you form your team?
Yeah, so I frankly believe that like the initial team is not really looking out for a co-founder thing, because if you have seen in the long run what really works is like if you know that person really well for a long time and then you start working with them with your with the thought processes aligning in the same manner, that's the perfect deal. So for me, how it happened was me, Shaurya, and Rajat. We are three co-founders of Flam. We knew each other in college, so we were together studying in BITS Pilani, right? So I knew Shaurya very well because me and Shaurya both were a part of the entrepreneurship cell at college. And Shaurya and Rajat were good friends. So via Shaurya, I got to know Rajat as well, and that's how we started interacting. And there was always this thing where we wanted to do something. Initially, it was just doing out some random events and projects and all that. But then eventually, when we figured out that we were able to complement our skill sets so that we can do all the things which are required together, that made us believe that this is how probably the journey is going to be in the future as well. And that's how we were able to incline to together the all three of us that why not take a step ahead. And like I stepped out from the corporate job. Rajat and Shaurya, they didn't join the company which they're supposed to join itself, and then they gave away their offer as well. And that's how we took the entrepreneur plunge itself, because it's very simple, right? The high risk high reward category is not only for stocks and share market, right? It's always in is for in everything in life.
Very interesting thought. So, how did you decide to work on your first startup when you came up with your team? You knew them, and there was good synergy. So, it was Homingos, right? So, if you can help us with the journey of building Homingos at the first place.
Right. So it was pretty interesting. Like that, those are the days which I still remember everything, which what we used to do, what mistakes we did, where we were stuck, and everything. So it had some crazy ups and downs in the journey. Starting off with Homingos, we were just the three people, right? So how it was divided was I used to take care of the business and the overall top line, bottom line, everything. And Rajat and Shaurya also initially did the coding part. Rajat was the tech person always. And that's how we started Homingos. So the idea behind Homingos was always, and as founders, we always wanted to be in the consumer space because that's where we typically believe that we'll be able to add the maximum value and impact into the society and into the particular industry that we are going into, right? So and why that comes from completely from our upbringing and what all we always wanted to do. So I am a national level badminton player, right? So I've been in the sports and I know that there are a lot of gaps and everything which can be only solved if we are like changing the mindset of the consumers itself, right? So then Shaurya was like he did his engineering, but he was also initially preparing for his IAS and the civil services exam. So he also has that sort of a thing wherein going forward in the later stages of our career, probably will be willing to work with the government or willing to work with the societies wherein we can provide value and help in any manner possible, right? So that was the reason why we wanted to stick with the consumer space itself. And to create maximum impact in the consumer space, one thing which we realized that the social media as a particular industry has created the maximum impact in the shortest time, right? So if you talk about, if you compare multiple consumer things, so there are finance, there are social media, all different sets of industries which come under consumer tech itself, right? But the maximum impact on someone's life which has been created is via social media itself, right? So that's the reason why we decided that let's get into a space wherein we can do something on that part. But when you see social media, which we see today, is something which has very short-lived value, right? So because you we started with Facebook, we started with Orkut even before. Like people who are maybe my generation know what Orkut is, and we have probably used Orkut as well. So we started with Orkut, then Orkut became obsolete, right? So like today, if someone says that you won't be able to see your scraps or something on Orkut, no one really cares, right? Then Facebook came in. Facebook also became obsolete to a large majority of the users. Like I don't even remember the last time I opened Facebook, right? So this is something which we typically felt that these social medias, they create huge impact, but they are very short lived, probably 4 5 years of lifespan, right? And then we spoke with a lot of people to understand why is that so. One major thing which came out was that they are short lived because they don't really impact, or they don't have a physical existence, they don't really be able to engage that immersively with the consumers, right? So that's the reason why we started with Homingos. So at Homingos, what we were typically solving was we were merging the two industries of one being social media and another being a 200-year-old user habit of printing photographs, right? So we merged those two together because the printing photographs is something which is like, even if you have like a photograph from 20 years back in your house, that still remains, that still takes a physical place, that still has an emotional value which is attached, right? That's not the case when you're doing the same for any photo on the digital front, right? So that's the reason why we merged the two together, and we started to add social elements on the physical element of printing photographs itself, right? That's how the entire idea for Homingos began, where we started giving out free photo prints to consumers, wherein you can gift a physical postcard. So we used to call that product a postcard, right? It's a photo card sort of, not a postcard but a postcard, right? So that's how we actually started rolling out Homingos, right? It we became the number one app on Play Store in a single, for a single day, like for 24 hours, because the number of downloads and the orders which we got in India, that were maximum for any particular app, right? So this was something which actually gave us an understanding that if we are doing the right things there in the consumer space, if you are doing the right things and solving the right consumer needs, you will just blow up, right? You will just blow up because the virality factor works so immense that you will never understand why, but there will be consumers who will be talking about your product from one person to another, right? That's how we realized that this is just blowing up. And then we started like understanding that how exactly are consumers seeing the product. So we one I won't say a flaw, but one understanding which we got during Homingos journey was the experience which we were giving to the consumers was different than the existing photo prints industry. But they were really looking out for what can they get extra. So I'm not sure if you have heard of this Delta 4 theory by Kunal Shah, right? So that's where we really understood it. Unless and until the experience is somewhere, it's a delta shift from the current experience, we are not gonna be able to like create a habit, right? So that's the reason why we were doing Homingos. Our entire Homingos, so Flam wasn't have been formed if there wasn't any Homingos, because with Homingos we got such understanding of the consumers, of how they see photos, how they see social media. And this is not only for India, we also did a lot of things in the US to understand what does social media mean to consumers there, right? So that's how the Homingos journey and the team formation initially started, and then we moved on to Flam.
Interesting, interesting. So before moving forward with our conversation and talking about Flam, I would love to know about your unit economics in the early days, because that's where most of the founders give up, looking at the profitability, getting into loss or something like that. So if you can share your story on that as well.
Yes. So we were fortunate enough to raise friends and family investment very early. So we did some pilots in two cities, right? We did no, actually three cities. We did in Bangalore, we did in Ajmer, and we did in Nagpur, right? So these cities were properly chosen because we wanted tier 1, 2, 3 experiences for consumers, right? Then we did based on these pilots, we were able to convince a couple of our friends and relatives to help us in the initial journeys as well, right? That particular money which we raised was typically to get more people on board. Via that money we were able to catch hold of, till that time we were just the three of us, right? After the friends and family round, we got two more people who are a part of our core team at Flam even now. These are the people whom we knew from BITS, and they are good at, one is good at engineering and another one is good at design. Both of them were doing their job by that time, so we pulled them out of the job, we convinced them to join Homingos, and that particular thing started to scale up. So slowly we started making the team. But there were a couple of mistakes which we did, and which I suggest all the young founders to ensure, is that when you're getting the initial money, there's always the urge of spending it in marketing. But that's probably one thing which you'll have to understand, that you will definitely would love to spend in marketing, but at the initial stages of the startup you really don't know who to market, what to market, right? Unless and until you have been able to crack the complete PMF for the product, right? Once the product market fit is there, right? So that is the only way, when you understand that this is how the marketing is going to work, these are my customers, this is how much I'm going to spend, and this is the value I'm going to drive out of it, right? So we did some initial mistakes of spending money on hiring and on marketing, which we then understood. So for us, the unit economics typically were, because we were giving out the product, like you can imagine sending a printed photograph in and packed in an envelope to a consumer. So we were giving out physical products delivered to consumers. So the cost of acquisition was not only on running ads or running any promotions, but also it was, the cost of acquisition also involved the product cost itself, because the product was completely free for the consumer, right? So in that, our initial balance for when you say that unit economics, we were completely driven on user acquisition. But when we went live on the Play Store, and when we went viral on Play Store, we literally had to stop taking down orders after a point of time, because if we would have run that for completely, we would have been bankrupt, right? So then that would have been the end of the journey. So we did the math properly, that we'll have to stop at this particular moment, which gives us a runway for next few months, literally few months. And that was the time when three of us sat together, and we knew that this is the time when we'll have to understand that either we take a route of starting to understand how that in the remaining few months, how can we start making money in the business itself, or we start looking out for further investments into the industry, so that we can sustain even further with a longer runway, right? So we took a conscious decision of making sure that we got the user understanding from one side, and then raising funds on the other. So unit economics is something which a lot of startups and even we did not understand back then. But one thing which typically helped us was something which we even follow now, is always doing the back calculation of how much money do you have in the account and how much months of runway can you sustain it with it. Always, like every founder should have that particular thing back in their mind always, because that gives you clarity of how many experiments can you go ahead and do it across. Because it's all about, in specifically in the consumer space, you need to do experiments. You never know what's gonna really work out, right? And initially in the PMF days, or even after the PMF days, you need to understand that each experiment is not only gonna take your time and energy, it's definitely gonna cost some dollars as well, right? So these are something which typically need to be very good addressed by all the or three to whatever founders, so that they're aware of how much money is in the bank and how long are they going to sustain it.
Thanks, Malhar, for sharing these anecdotes from your experience of running Flam. Moving forward, when we look at Flam, it is like very optimistic, right? Very visionary sort of thinking that you guys have to build the future in the social media space. So, how did you come up with this concept altogether in the early days, and how are you growing right now?
Yeah. So the whole idea for starting Flam was the insights that we got during Homingos, right? So as I said, right, for the Delta Force Harry to become successful, we really understood that there needs to be a change in the overall experience the consumers are having itself, right? So earlier we were just focusing on how can we give out a product to the consumers and then they'll be happy. That was the only thing which we did. But being happy is not a entire behavior change that we can get in. That can only happen when you can give out an experience to consumers which is way better than what they are getting today, right? That's where we started the thought, and we did again the user studies. This is again the days of Homingos itself, right? And we understood that we need to club the things which are currently going on, which are happening in the current world, with the things which we know that already work, right? So when you're talking about the current things, this is the era where entire digital generation is going on, right? So 15 years back, we never would have thought that there would be like some auto wala would be playing a video on their smartphone when they are driving at such, right? So you never thought that on your smartphone you can do swipe ups and you can see multiple videos, which is like possible today via TikTok and Instagram Reels and such products, right? So this is something which we understood that these are the things which we need to add on, and they have changed the experience, right? Short video format, because of a company like TikTok, short video format has now become an entire industry as such. So there's an entire segment around that, right? So we typically wanted to understand that these things which are currently working, how can we club them together with the learnings that we have got and give a consumer an experience which they have never thought before, right? So there's one thing of like giving an experience of never seen before, but there's one thing of giving an experience of never thought before, right? So it is difficult initially because adoption becomes difficult for such experiences, right? So then we looked into the available technologies. It took our, at that time we were just a 5-member team. We were just looking at how can we make these experiences, and that's how we got into the entire metaverse augmented reality space as such, that what is this thing that can give an experience which people have never thought before itself, right? So that's how we figured out that AR is something which is going to be the thing in the future, because you cannot have better experiences and you cannot involve 3D when it comes to experiences as such without having the advent of AR, right? So even if today on Instagram, when you see these face filters where there are like these, if there's a cat face filter, then there are the cat ears and these face and everything coming. That is particularly augmented reality, but that is run on a 2D surface, and that's running as a video itself. So AR was used to experience that, but that is only now run on videos acting as filters itself, right? So that was the time when we understood that this is where what we really want to do. So it took us like good amount of time to build the product around that, and then we were able to come across with a product called Flam cards. So the idea for Flam cards was also in a manner wherein we had changed the product altogether, and we wanted to focus only on the youth and make them believe that we are a brand as such which is completely new. So that required to leave apart everything that we have done at Homingos and start fresh, because that gives us a completely new identity, right? So that's the reason why we like shifted from Homingos to Flam, right? And we launched this product after a lot of alpha beta testing into the market called Flam cards, which just got blown away into the market, right? That was the whole journey of like starting Flam itself. The motivation behind Flam was giving an experience to people which they have never thought before, right? And talking about that, I have a Flam card sample which I'll showcase to you guys as well, so that you'll understand that what is this experience I'm talking about, right? All of us here have seen like printed photos, they have seen what social media and Instagram and Reel looks like, right? But what about what I'll probably show you something is completely different, and probably some people here might have not ever thought about it, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So can you guys see this? This is a regular printed photo, which you can get it printed at any local print shop near your house, office, whatever. Right? Is this visible?
Yeah, I think you can put a reaction.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, perfect. Right. So what basically we do is this is a camera app, right? So Flam app is the camera first interface that we are using. So every time you open the app and you sign up, the camera opens, right? All that the consumers have to do is take their phone and point it towards the Flam card to see the experience, right? So I'll just show you, right? So basically there's a physical card which is not only playing a video. If you can see, there are these 3D elements, like this is this bird which is coming outside of the card, which is flying around the card, and then it goes back. So if I just tilt the card, you guys will be able to see the 3D elements, right? Right. So this is the product which we got launched in when we launched Flam, right? And this required a completely new branding as such, because it's a completely new experience for anyone who has always seen social media and photographs as such, right? So this is what we launched, and that is the whole journey from moving from Homingos to Flam.
Very interesting, Malhar. So we'd love to know what goes behind building a product like this, which is so futuristic. Like you have recently raised a $3.5 million round from one of the top-notch VCs as well. So what goes behind building a product like this in general?
Yes. So like I said, right, giving an experience was something which the first primary thought, right? And giving to building a product on top of this is on the consumer front, you always do experiment, right? So we never knew that this is something which people will start liking, right? So building a product is typically someone who is really, really close to the consumers is the primary thing, right? So you need to start talking to consumers. You need to start understanding. So it's simple, like building a product. All in today's world, it requires like couple of developers you can build a product. But the difficult part is not exactly to just build. The difficult part is how do you scale the product itself, because you can always get early adopters, maybe 100, 200 customers who will say and who will come to you and say that this product is amazing. This will happen for everything. So even if you look at multiple products on Product Hunt, every single product, you will see that there are few people who like the product. But that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is how do you scale it to ensure that product is the product in that particular segment, right? So building this product was something wherein we figured out that we need to start talking to consumers, understand what the requirements are, and then figure out a means where what exactly are the needs where we are able to solve. So when you see the world today, it's going to be a very, very different world than what we imagine today after 15 years from now, right? So 15 years back, no, as I said, right, 15 years back, no one realized that we'll be able to see videos on our smartphone, right? Now the camera first interface is something which is going to come into the future very, very soon, and we wanted to ensure that the experience which we are giving to people is also futuristic, but at the same time related to the current world and pretty easy to understand and see, right? So if you see the the world where we are going, every big tech company is now talking about the AR glasses and the VR headsets and all that. So this is very preliminary time. So AR glasses right now are in that stage which smartphones were there around 10-12 years back, right? So another 10-12 years down the line, we'll be having AR glasses in every household, everyone using those very frequently. You never know, there could be like someone like a Geo or a Facebook or like I mean Meta coming into the picture saying that we'll be giving out, let's say, 100 million glasses to free of cost to in India and other country, right? So now it all boils down to that, which are the companies or which are the platforms that are giving the most amazing experiences to consumers, which people really like, right? So this is where we wanted to merge the gap between, because if I randomly go on the street and I ask someone that what do you mean by a camera first interface to you, the one answer which I'll probably get is open the camera, scan a QR code, and pay for a UPI. Right? That's the only use case of camera first interface which has really worked. But if you see, for Paytm to build up that use case, it took them probably 4 or 5 years with probably hundreds of thousands of crore rupees spent on this, right? So that's how difficult is to change the habit. And what we are thinking it is very futuristic, because that's how we really envision the world is going to be changing eventually, right? So what we are building today, probably there are few products for whom we'll be able to see the impact maybe 5-6 years down the line itself. But we are already aware of that. That is how it's going to be, right? That's how the world is going to change across. So like building a product needs multiple things, but the top three things I would say is, first is you need to be very close to the consumers, or I would say the TG which you are looking at. Second, you need to understand what are the needs, right? So being close to the users is not something that you talk to them every day, but you need to understand what are the needs, and needs are divided into 2 points, right? So that covers the third point as well in building the product. That needs are basically what users want and what users will want in the future. So the will want depends a lot on where the industry is moving, where the trends are moving, right? So what users need today is something, they need a better experience. But what do you mean? Better experience can have so many different answers to for a product, right? But what the industry is moving towards, like for example, it becomes very simple to scale when you start talking about that we are building a product for the future, and that future is going to be a social metaverse, right? Because everyone is talking about metaverse. What do you mean by metaverse? What's going to be the future look like? So people directly come and relate to your product. Yeah, I understand what a metaverse is going to look like, right? So these are the things which we typically thought of when we were looking at building a product and sticking to the industry which is futuristic.
That's great. That's great. So when you mentioned about talking to customers, directly understanding the value proposition from them, scaling it up with numbers. So if you can shed some lights on your growth metrics or KPIs that you track every day at Flam.
Yeah. So for us, it's all about adoption, right? So we are looking at how fast can we get users to adopt this sort of a platform, right? So the KPIs we were not looking at any general KPIs like a DAU or a MAU sort of a number. We were only looking at a single KPI, which we say is basically interactions, right? So the interaction basically means, so when I open the camera and I scan the card, that is counted as one interaction, right? And the more interactions we have, that means that there will be more people who are adopting to this particular technology, right? So that's the reason why the only KPI we say is the number of scans in a month. That's one on the overall level, and then the number of scans by a single person, right? So number of interaction by a person and number of interaction in a month. These are the two primary KPIs which we track at Flam, because they help us understand that what we are heading. So these KPIs were the ones which we really were like laser focused on till the time we came to October. By the time we came October this year, we understood that now we are being able to understand the consumption side of it. So when you're talking about metaverse, right, or when you're talking about, I won't say typically Web 3.0. Web 3.0 has a lot of things, but let's say we are talking about metaverse, it is going to be like everything around creator economy, right? So the whole idea would be that which platform is going to get the maximum amount of creators. So it's the both, like creator and creation and consumption are the two basic and two major pillars for any metaverse platform to run across, right? So we understood by the time October come in that we have been able to solve the consumption side of it. By consumption, we typically believe is that for our case, the consumption is how many times people open the camera and scan a Flam card. That's basically AR content consumption, right? But when in since November onward, we started tracking a particular KPI of how many creators are we able to onboard as well. Because to give you an idea, the even a big company like even a like a huge company like Snapchat, right? They have probably 100 million MAUs in India, or and maybe a 300 million MAUs globally, right? But these are all on the consumption side, right? So if you ask, like there's a report on Snapchat which says that the number of people who can make a snap filter or maybe who can make a 3D filter on Snapchat using AR, there are just 200k such people, right? So this becomes the creator economy is something which is going to fuel the overall the metaverse consumption, because that's how it has always been. So if you go back to the adoption of internet became easy because of social media platforms like Facebook making creation of text content very simple, right? So initially on Facebook there were text and images only, right? So that made the creation so you can write your post, you can comment. This is all basically making creation simple, right? And once you start making creation, consumption follows. If you do an apples and oranges comparison, it took YouTube around 8 years to come to a level of creators which TikTok got in 18 months, right? So you can see the growth of TikTok versus YouTube. I'm not saying TikTok is good or YouTube is bad or something like that. I'm just talking about the approach which these companies took, which gave them massive growth. So today, an average, so it's banned in India, but an average American teenager spends more time on TikTok than they spend on YouTube, right? Because that's how the growth they have been really able to achieve. So what we are typically doing, like we term this as well, that what TikTok did to YouTube is what we are doing to Snapchat, right? So we are just solving right now, or we are solving for AR content creation, and we are democratizing AR content creation to get more and more creators to try multiple 3D filters that we have put in. So when the Flam card which I showed you had one particular 3D filter where there was a bird coming out, flying across the Flam card and going back in, right? So there are these multiple creations which can happen on that, and we are just letting people do and choose whichever they want to do and add and make a particular creator live, right? That's how so when you're talking about the key growth matrix, it's only around creation and consumption. But consumption was which we were laser focused on till the month of October. It's not that we are not focused on, but that has become a P1 priority. The P0 priority now is how can we democratize creation as such. So we are launching multiple tools, and we are launching multiple product features to ensure that we are getting more and more creators on the platform now.
That's amazing, Malhar. So thanks for sharing your story. Now, I would like to know about some mistakes that you committed during your, entrepreneurial journey while building Flam, while building the D2C brand that you were building in the initial days.
So literally, all the things which I've spoken about are because of the mistakes that we did, right? So it's always easy to like think in the hindsight and say that this is what we learned, but typically that learning happens because of the mistakes that we did, right? So there are these one, like as I said, right? So couple of mistakes which we typically did was we looked at the consumer space like a like an enterprise stage. So a consumer startup and an enterprise startup, the fundamental difference in those two are, and in an enterprise startup like a B2B SaaS sort of a startup, the problem statement which you're trying to solve is being told by the clients to you. In a consumer startup, you have to read between the lines and understand what is the consumer need of the user that you really have to solve. So there's a big difference on understanding. So we always spoke with the users and thought, yeah, this is the problem which consumers are saying and let's solve that, right? But that's not how it works, because if you talk about to consumers, like, what is the problem in your life, they'll tell you 100 problems, but you don't really need to solve the 100 problem. There will be something which is like the 101th thing which they won't say, but you will have to do experiments around that, but they will behave in a manner where they are literally looking for the 101th problem to be solved, right? Then moving on to and that's one of the biggest learnings from mistakes which we did in the past, because we launched couple of features and products which took us either in a very different direction, or even if we launched, they failed miserably, right? Because the reason was that we were looking at like the problems, or we were looking at what should we do, and we were doing directly by asking these to consumers. You need to understand that what to hear from the consumers and what not to hear from the consumers, right? And otherwise, because startups typically have limited resources, right? So if you go ahead and start solving all the problems, you will probably die before solving any of the problem, right? So you need to typically choose what exactly are those problems, that you figure out that this is something which fits into where we are and what we can really do, and go ahead and do that. On that as well, you will better understand if you keep doing experiments on top of it, right? So this is the biggest learning which we got via multiple failure points. Second, as I had already told you, right, when it comes to early stage startups, it is very important to have an even a technical startup, technical founder, even if there is a CTO or any other person like a product person who's a founder. If you are a founder, you need to be good salesperson, and you need to be basic in terms of knowing the finances part as well, because by finances I mean that you need to understand that how long are you going to sustain with the amount of money you have in the bank. You cannot just go about taking random decisions without knowing what's happening with the runway and where you are headed, right? As a founder, you need to be a visionary salesman, definitely. That is something. So initially, when we decided that we three are going to work together, we never thought that Rajat, who's my CTO, right? Rajat would ever have to sell anything, right? That's not how it typically works. Like, we feel that it's always like we Rajat will be involved in building the product and ensuring the technology is right and everything. But that's not the case, right? Every founder, if they are not, they have to learn from other founders and learn from the ecosystem that how do you sell your vision, because in every stage you'll have to sell to employees, you'll have to sell to investors, you'll have to sell to external stakeholders, you'll have to sell to your clients, you'll have to sell to your users, right? You have to be a tremendously good salesperson to be able to do that. And this is something which need not be a trait which you cannot acquire. These are skill sets which you can acquire, but requires some dedicated effort towards that if you're not having, right? So I have seen founders having CTOs or maybe product person who are very shy, who don't talk to anyone, right? But I have seen these teams and these companies not scaling as well, because they are not able to communicate to their stakeholders or maybe to their leadership team that this is what we want, or maybe this is what we should get. That's one of the biggest issues initially. So we didn't thought that it was necessary, but as a team, then we realized that as a founders, we need to be having some particular things which we typically need to learn before we do anything else, right? So being a good salesman is definitely one of those things that we were able to learn. And managing the finances, right? Because at a startup, you are definitely willing to give the maximum value to any user or any client, depending on you are doing on consumer space or on the enterprise stage. But still, at the same time, you need to be very much aware on what type of experiments, what type of things can you do given the money you have in the bank, right? So every founder needs to be always aware of that.
That is interesting. So, Malhar, like last question from my side before opening off the questions from the floor itself.
I guess there were a couple
How?
of comments, so we'll
Yes,
probably
yes.
get to them later.
Yeah, yeah. So after this, I'll just queue them up so that they can ask the questions directly. So last question is like, how does it feel like achieving product market fit after hustling for so many years, learnings, failures, and all sort of things?
It's definitely a damn good feeling, not because of the hustle, because when you're doing the hustle and if you're really into it, you don't really feel that as a hustle. If I think on the hindsight and on the as a retrospect thought, I think that we did a lot of hustle. But when you get to that PMF level, it is basically a feeling wherein you get to understand that you have created some impact, right? Because at the end, when you have customers talking about the product, that it is really really amazing to see that customers talking about the product, that it has changed their life, or it is something which that they really were not able to find anywhere else, or that really changed the entire thought of them how to lead the life and everything. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm not sure you will be able to relate to those as well or not. But so for a product, for the Flam card as a product, we had got one user who we have spoke to, who was based in a tier 2 town in India, who had ordered around 23 Flam cards from us, right? So we as founders, we typically always spoke to the users who didn't order, who ordered maybe 1, 5 and all that thing. So we started speaking with the users, and we found that this person, like on an average, the number of Flam cards which people were ordering was around 3 to 4, and now this person has ordered 23 in a very short amount of time. So I got on a call with this particular person. So what he typically said was, he was a person who was preparing for his IIT exam, right? On his study table, he had ordered all motivational quotes which played videos on Flam card, and he had put up all these 23 Flam cards in front of his study table. And there was a phone which was smartphone which was kept in his drawer, which had only one app, which was Flam. So he opened his drawer, opened the Flam app, and scanned any one of them to get motivation to start studying again for the IIT and for the 12th exam. This was a use case which I thought I would have never thought in my life, right? This is something which we never thought. We typically, the use cases which we typically thought were way away from what this person was using Flam cards for, right? So this is something which gives us so much pleasure to see that we have been able to create an impact. And as a matter of fact, that person was not able to get into the major IITs, but he has now got into an NIT, which I'm still happy with. Right? There was a teeny tiny part of his preparation because of which he got into NIT, and he's doing very well for himself. And there was a part of Flam cards which helped him to do so. Right? So now this really gives you such a pleasure, which is not really explainable as well. Once you start understanding, that's the only time when you get to feel that this is the impact that you are able to create.
Correct. Yeah, we can understand the way you are empathizing with the users, relating to their scenario. That's really great. Respecting your time, we'll have to end this off here. And any ending note or anything else that you would like to conclude it with, please go ahead.
All right. So I haven't actually thought of any such suggestions to give out or anything as a note. But yeah, first, again, I'd like to thank all of you guys for staying across for this entire call, and that this was something which I loved interacting as well. All of you guys are happy to reach out as well, probably on LinkedIn, or even my email is fine. It's simple. It's malhar@flamapp.com. You can reach out to me there, and I'll be happy to connect. And as a last note, like it's very important that what you are doing makes sense to you. So I'll definitely say the last point as this, that what I am doing makes me completely happy. So spending 14 hours a day in the office is something which I really love. So if that is something which gets you going and gets you moving for the day, and makes you feel like getting up from the bed, you should definitely go across and do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Malhar, for joining in, for your time. And I can share your LinkedIn and mail ID with the folks. They can reach out to you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you so much.